My name is Violet, and I am 28 years old. For as long as I can remember, I have felt invisible within my own family. It always seemed like I was in the background, unnoticed and unimportant. My younger sister, Lucy, who is 5 years younger than me, has always been the center of attention. Our parents adore her, showering her with love, praise, and support no matter what she does. Every little achievement of hers is celebrated, while my efforts are barely acknowledged. Whenever Lucy struggled, even with the smallest problem, our parents would rush to help her. They would find solutions for her before she even had to ask. But when it came to me, they acted as if my challenges weren't worth their time. If I accomplished something, they either ignored it or treated it as something expected of me. It hurt, but over the years, I learned to keep my feelings to myself. One ordinary afternoon, my family was preparing to go to the park. My mother was packing snacks, my father was looking for his keys, and Lucy was excitedly urging them to hurry. The house was buzzing with energy, but I stood on the sidelines, feeling like an outsider. Gathering my courage, I approached my mother and softly asked if I could join them. She barely looked at me before dismissively saying, "You should stay home and focus on your studies." My father didn't even glance my way, and Lucy, without a second thought, walked out the door, happily chatting with our parents. I stood there in the quiet house, feeling more alone than ever. This was not an isolated incident, it was a pattern that repeated throughout my childhood. Lucy was the golden child, while I was an afterthought. Despite this, Lucy often approached me with innocent enthusiasm, wanting to play or share stories. But as she grew older, she started to notice how differently we were treated. Instead of sympathizing, she embraced her privileged position. She became more confident, more sure of herself, and sometimes even dismissive of me. She would brush off my thoughts, laugh at my failures, and yet, in front of our parents, she maintained a sweet, obedient image. By the time I finished high school, I was eager to gain independence. I took a job as a waitress at a small local restaurant. At first, I was nervous, but over time, I grew to enjoy it. The work gave me a sense of purpose and rhythm, something that I had never felt at home. However, my family did not see it that way. My mother constantly belittled my job, and Lucy's words of encouragement felt empty, as if she were just saying them out of politeness. At family gatherings, I was barely acknowledged. No one asked about my life, my job, or my feelings. It was as if I wasn't there at all. Despite all of this, a part of me still longed for their approval. I wanted to feel loved, to be seen as important, but deep down, I knew that I would always be in Lucy's shadow. At 22, my life took a turn for the better. I met Charles through a mutual friend. At first, he seemed serious and reserved, but as we spent more time together, I discovered his kindness and warmth. He listened to me, truly listened, in a way that no one else ever had. Our friendship blossomed into love, and before long, we moved in together. Life with Charles was fulfilling. We enjoyed simple moments, cooking together, taking long walks, or just sitting in comfortable silence. With him, I felt valued. As my new life unfolded, I found myself distancing from my family. The less I saw them, the lighter I felt. I no longer had to endure the silent pain of being overlooked. Still, I tried to maintain some connection with them, but the bond felt fragile and forced. One day, after months of minimal contact, I decided to attend a family gathering. The house was filled with laughter and chatter, but I felt like an outsider. I engaged in small conversations, but my presence was barely acknowledged. Then, Lucy stood up and made an announcement. She was engaged. She shared the news with the entire family before even mentioning it to me. The room erupted in joy and excitement. Everyone congratulated her, showering her with love and attention. Once again, I was forgotten. I tried to be happy for her, but deep inside, I felt a familiar ache. As the wedding preparations progressed, I found myself excluded. No one shared details with me, and when I tried to be involved, Lucy brushed me off. Determined to stay connected, I reached out to her, offering my help, but her response was cold and dismissive. Then, one day, Lucy called me unexpectedly. She asked about her wedding dress. My heart lifted. I thought she was finally including me, but before I could respond, she said something that shattered me. "But you're not invited to the ceremony." I felt my breath catch. Confused and hurt, I asked why. Lucy hesitated before admitting that she didn't want her fiancé, Jonathan, and his family to know that I was a waitress. She was afraid it would make her look bad. Her words cut deep. I had always felt like I didn't belong, but this was different. This was outright rejection. My voice trembled as I asked her if she even considered how much this would hurt me. "That's just the way it is," she said flatly. "If you really cared about me, you'd understand." I stared at my phone in disbelief. It was clear, Lucy cared more about her image than she did about me. Desperate for some support, I called my parents, but their reaction only deepened my pain. My father laughed, thinking I was joking. My mother dismissed my words, saying, "Lucy would never say something like that." They refused to believe me. With a heavy heart, I returned home. Charles was waiting for me, and the moment he saw my face, he knew something was wrong. I sat beside him and told him everything, about Lucy's wedding, the cruel words she had said, and how our parents didn't believe me. As I spoke, tears threatened to spill over. Charles was quiet for a moment, then sighed deeply. "There's something I need to tell you," he said, his voice hesitant. "I've been working as Lucy's wedding planner." I stared at him in shock. A mix of emotions ran through me, surprise, confusion, and even a bit of betrayal. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Charles looked pained. "I didn't want to hurt you. I knew you had distanced yourself from them, and I thought keeping it to myself would be better." His words stung, but I understood his intentions. "But Lucy asked about the dress, didn't she?" I asked, my voice wavering. Charles nodded and placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. "Yes, and I think that means, in some way, she still values you. If she truly wanted nothing to do with you, she wouldn't have reached out at all." I looked into his eyes, searching for reassurance. His words made sense, but the pain was still fresh. Would Lucy ever truly see me as more than an afterthought? I didn't know, but as Charles held me close, I felt, at least in that moment, that I wasn't alone. I kept working on Lucy's wedding dress, putting all my heart into each stitch and detail. As I carefully sewed the delicate fabric, a storm of emotions swirled inside me. Every time I thought about the wedding, I felt a deep sadness, a sense of being left out. Still, I focused on making the dress perfect. Somewhere deep down, I held on to a tiny hope that Lucy might change her mind and invite me after all. But as the days passed, no invitation came. The night of the rehearsal dinner arrived. The venue was glowing with elegant decorations, and laughter filled the air as family and friends enjoyed the evening. Everyone was celebrating, caught up in the joy of the upcoming wedding. Jonathan, Lucy's fiancé and an old acquaintance of mine from college, noticed my absence. He had always been kind to me, and we shared a comfortable friendship. His brows furrowed in confusion as he turned to Lucy during a break. "Hey, why isn't Violet here? She's your sister, shouldn't she be part of this?" he asked curiously. Lucy hesitated for a moment before forcing a smile. "Oh, she's been really busy with work. I doubt she had the time to come. It's nothing to worry about." Jonathan didn't seem fully convinced. "But isn't it strange for your own sister to miss such an important event?" Caught off guard, Lucy quickly steered the conversation away. "Maybe, but let's not dwell on that. You're here, and that's what matters. Let's just enjoy the evening." Though still puzzled, Jonathan let the matter drop for the time being. Later that night, my phone rang. When I picked up, Lucy's furious voice filled my ears. "Violet, why did you snitch to Jonathan?" she snapped. I was taken aback. What are you talking about? Don't play dumb. You must have told him something to make him ask me why you weren't invited to the wedding." Her voice was sharp with anger, laced with accusation. "I didn't say anything," I protested. "Jonathan must have just noticed on his own. I had nothing to do with it." "Liar, you manipulated him, didn't you? You're trying to guilt me into inviting you," she shouted. My chest tightened with frustration. "Lucy, I swear I didn't say anything to Jonathan. Just stop interfering in my wedding. It's none of your business," she spat before abruptly hanging up. As I stared at my phone, still in shock, it rang again. This time, it was our mother. Her voice was cold and filled with disappointment. "Violet, what do you think you're doing? Why are you trying to interfere with your sister's wedding? What is your goal?" I felt my heart sink. "Mom, I didn't do anything. Jonathan just asked on his own. I never said a word to him." But before I could finish explaining, my father's deep, stern voice joined in. "Do you have any idea how much trouble you've caused Lucy? You should be ashamed of yourself." A wave of frustration crashed over me. No matter what I said, they had already made up their minds. I clenched my fists, trying to keep my emotions in check. "You know what? I don't even want to explain anymore. It's clear no one believes me." I ended the call, my hands trembling. Tears welled up in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. The weight of their unfair accusations crushed me, leaving me feeling completely alone. As my anger and hurt swirled inside me, a new thought took shape. I grabbed my phone again and dialed Charles, the planner handling the wedding arrangements. "Please cancel the rental of Lucy's wedding dress," I said firmly. There was a brief silence on the other end before Charles finally spoke. "Are you sure?" "Yes," I answered without hesitation. Charles sighed. "All right, I understand. I'll take care of it." Later, I heard from Charles that Lucy was devastated when the dress never arrived. On her wedding day, the missing dress caused chaos. Guests whispered among themselves, and confusion filled the air. Lucy, unable to control her frustration, confronted Charles after the ceremony. "How could this happen? Where was my dress? You ruined my wedding day," she raged. Charles, calm as ever, simply replied, "The rental was cancelled." Lucy was too stunned to respond immediately. I imagined her face twisting in shock, but I felt no guilt. I had simply reclaimed what was mine. A few days later, something unexpected happened. I received a call from Jonathan. His voice was serious, his tone filled with concern. "Violet, I need to ask you something. I've tried talking to Lucy about why you weren't at the wedding, but she keeps dodging the question." I hesitated. "Why are you asking me?" "Because I feel like I'm not getting the full story, and honestly, I need to know the truth," he admitted. After a long pause, I finally spoke. "Lucy didn't want you or your family to know that I'm a waitress. She was worried about how you might perceive that, and I guess she didn't know we were friends." Silence stretched between us before Jonathan finally responded. "I can't believe she thought like that." That conversation changed everything. During their honeymoon, Jonathan made a shocking decision. He wanted a divorce. When Lucy returned home, she was greeted by an unpleasant surprise, a "for sale" sign in front of her house. She immediately called me, her voice shaking. "Why is our old house up for sale?" I sighed. "Mom and Dad told me to let you stay there before, but since you got married, I figured you didn't need it anymore." There was a long silence before she finally whispered, "Actually, I'm getting divorced." My breath caught in my throat. "Divorce? But you just got back from your honeymoon." Lucy's voice turned sharp. "It's your fault. You ruined my marriage." I froze, unable to process her words. "Lucy, I never wanted this to happen." Jonathan called me, and I simply told him the truth. "I didn't know he would leave you." "Don't try to act innocent. You should take responsibility for what you did," she shouted before hanging up. Days later, another call came, this time from our parents. My mother's voice was filled with disappointment. "Violet, you destroyed your sister's life. How could you do this?" My father added, "You've always been selfish, always causing problems." Anger flared inside me. "It doesn't matter what I say, does it? You'll always blame me for everything, but you know what? I'm done caring." There was a pause before my mother sighed. "You have no empathy for your own family." A bitter laugh escaped my lips. "Funny, because I've never felt any from you." I hung up. But Lucy wasn't finished. She took to social media, posting daily rants blaming me for everything. The comments grew nastier with each passing day. Continued.